Greetings, humans.
Greetings, humans.
This is Dave here from mikedavesmultiverse with my co-host.
My name is Mike. Thanks for joining the Multiverse, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This week, we're very proud to introduce our new friend, Jason Quitt. Jason is an author, teacher, and lecturer who explores the subjects of mysticism, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, meditation, and qigong. He graduated from the Institute of Energy Wellness and has continued his journey to explore metaphysics to this day. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, so you're here for episode 012, number 12 of Multiverse Live. How does that feel?
It's good. 12 is a good number.
12 was my favorite number. It was my baseball number, so that works out. So tell us a little bit, Jason, about how you got into this line of work. You said you started out as a musician. How'd you end up here?
Great question. Well, yes, my first job out of college was a recording studio. So that's why you see a lot of gear around my office here. So that was my first passion and love is music. And it was during my time in the studio that I started to have spiritual experiences. So this was around the age of 22 years old. And just to give reference, I'm 42, almost 43 now. So almost 20 plus years going. And basically, I started to have a thing called sleep paralysis. I don't know if any of you have experienced that.
I have twice in my life. Yep.
Okay. How fun is it?
It was terrifying. And the first time it happened, it was the middle of the day, and I laid down for a nap, and then all of a sudden I couldn't move, and I could move my eyes. I could look around the room. I had never heard of sleep paralysis in my life. The weird thing was it was kind of psychedelic because I think it was only for 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like it was like for hours or something. It was very strange and scary.
Yeah.
When you couldn't move, Dave, did you try yelling or screaming? I always try to do that in my sleep paralysis. I'm probably
I tried talking. The only thing I think I could remember doing was just moving my eyes, and that was it. But some people say that you get like feel your spirits in the room. It wasn't anything like that. I didn't feel a dark presence or anything. I just was scared. I was scared.
Well, for me, it was almost every night. This was like a big problem in my early 20s. And as it progressed, I started to kind of get more in tune or sensed about what was happening to me. Mm-hmm. And, then I started to feel presences in the room, mm-hmm. Just like most people describe. And then I started to feel like there was something else inside my body. Me. So basically you're like screaming in your mind to wake up, like to move a finger, move an arm, to wake yourself up, and you're screaming, and it doesn't help to feel that there's something walking around the room while you're in this state.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is it's like your body becomes a sarcophagus. It's like you drop in and then suddenly you have a body within your body, just like a Russian doll. And I found that I could kind of like move around like inside my body. And one night this was happening to me, and I was just so pissed off because, it happens once or twice, sure. But if it happens like 20, 30, 40 times,
I can imagine.
You're just pissed off. You're not scared. You're just pissed off. So I'm like rustling myself in my body as hard as I can to wake myself up. And I pushed so hard that I popped out. So that was like my first experience of an out-of-body experience in my early 20s. And I found myself like what they would describe in a near-death experience. So I found myself on the ceiling of my bedroom, and I was looking down at myself frozen in bed. And so immediately it was like, I call it like the giant slap, or the slap of reality, because you're not hallucinating, you're not dreaming. This is like, it's such a slap of reality being out of your body that you just can't shake it. It's such a profound experience. And then I looked at the foot of my bed, and there was a giant shadow just standing at the foot of my bed. And this scared me so much. Like, it just put the fear of God in me, because I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't reading books about spirituality or anything. It scared me so much. I just got sucked back in my body, and I woke up, heart pounding out of my chest. But leaving your body, like, it just changes you. Even though the experience was very frightening, all I wanted to do was go back there. Yeah. So I don't know why I'm this crazy, but that's all I focused on doing, is try to get back into a sleep paralysis state and leave my body.
I can imagine it's kind of like getting a peek into Narnia, and then somebody slamming the door on you and not letting you go back in, and you're like, hey.
Exactly. Or the Wizard of Oz. Once you begin to peek behind the curtain, you want to find out what's actually behind there.
Exactly.
So how's the journey going? Looking behind the veil.
You learn a lot. That's all I could say is the first couple of years were intense and scary, because I did learn how to leave my body. Basically, it's in the state in between waking and dreaming. And if you keep your mind awake as you go to sleep, you could feel your body shutting down. And that's what sleep paralysis actually is. It's consciously being aware of the shutting down experience of your body. And once you tap into it, there's this kind of moment where basically it's almost like you enter into this other dimension, or this astral dimension, where then you can kind of, I use the word push, but it's more like will. You have to will yourself out. And then once you're out, it's not like the movies. It's not like I can say, okay, I'm going to go to the moon and explore the moon, or I'm going to go back in time. And it's like you have no control. It's like I could have like a moment of control in my bedroom. So I could just hang out in my bedroom, out of my body. But then it's like a portal will open up and you get sucked through it, and then you're on this journey that you can't control. So it gets quite intense. And sometimes you're not alone. Sometimes you'll leave your body and there'll be something waiting for you in your room. And that can be a very bad thing, and it could be a very good thing.
Right.
And that just depends on what kind of experience you're going to have that night.
Yeah.
So it's almost like going insane. So you really have to really be grounded. And this is what led me first into this field, because I first turned to Qigong. So I learned how to control my energy. And this is the basis of, the spiritual energy and leaving your body. And then I went to energy medicine school. So I got out of the studio, went to energy medicine school. And then from there, I started to learn shamanism. And what was amazing with shamanism is that the native community knows all about this stuff. It's not hidden from them. It's their myths. It's their tradition. So for me, talking to anybody like my friends, family, like a priest or a rabbi or whoever you talk to, nobody knows anything about this. But you go into the shamanic world, the native world, and they're like, yeah, this is, the journey. You're going into spirit world, and, this is what you're going to experience. So that's where I started my journey. And from there, doing my Qigong, I had subsequent out-of-body journeys and past life rememberings of Egypt. And I was not into Egypt at all. I was, everybody has like a coffee table book of Egypt in their home, but I wasn't really into Egypt. But I would go there at nighttime, and I'd be put into this temple, and I'd be standing with this pharaoh-looking guy, and they'd be standing in postures. And I just intuitively knew to copy the pharaoh. I would just copy, if they're standing in a posture, I would stand in front of the pharaoh and I would copy that posture in front of them. They were all standing postures. And when I did that, something incredible happened. It felt like something opened up above my head. And I just got this like waterfall of energy through my body that felt like the rays of the sun, or like photons of heat just running through my body. And I would wake up from these experiences still in my bed, holding these postures and still feeling that like flow of energy through me. And then when to break the posture, the energy stops. So I knew that this was important. And I started to document it. And then once I started to practice it more, I started to teach it, and then it just kind of exploded. So my first book was Egyptian Postures of Power. This is how I got into all this stuff. And so I started teaching like these different meditations and movements to tune into energies. And I was going to write the second version of this book, right? So I was going to write, this is all about sun, basically, sun energy, sun movements. And I was really getting into ancient mysticism. So I was reading all the ancient texts from Egypt. And so I was going to do a second book. And as I'm doing the second book, I was writing a chapter called The Brazen Serpent, very biblical, the Brazen Serpent. And I was going over hieroglyphics in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. And one of those images I was tracing on my computer for the book, and I noticed that it was in a very weird posture. And I'm all about postures, right? So a friend of mine, a teacher, I think it was Robert Gilbert, once told me, if you want to know the secret of anything, you have to measure it. So that's what I did. So I measured the hieroglyph. I just made all the angles on the hieroglyph, and this number kept coming up over and over and over again, which was 23.5 degrees. And I was like, what is this number? I don't even know what this number is. And then I just Googled it, and it said 23.5 degrees is the tilt of the Earth. I'm like, wait a second. That's a very specific number, very important number. And they seem to put that number with all the solar deities. So when I was tracing solar gods, I kept coming up with 23.5 degrees. And I'm like, okay, this is, I think I found, or I stumbled on like a secret language here that no one's really figured out. And so that was the first book. Astral Genesis is me like going through Egyptian mysticism. And then from there, just kind of going down the rabbit hole of finding all these angles in ancient artwork and what it means. And basically it relates to the stars and the cycles of the sun and the moon. And then I went back to write the book for the second version of the Qigong Salute to the Moon. And as I'm writing that book, something else occurred to me. And then I wrote another book, which is The Gates of the Anunnaki, which has to do with sacred geometry and sacred numbers. And basically what I was finding was that when you start reading these ancient Sumerian texts, there's these repeating patterns of numbers based on the number 60. And, you know, we all get the system of numbers from the Sumerians, the base 60, base 10 model of numbers. And when I started to piece these numbers together from these texts and put them into sacred geometry, it created a blueprint. And that blueprint was basically heaven and earth. You know, so it's like, in my mind, there's this knowledge of sacred geometry in the stars, as above, so below. And these ancient astronomer priests, these ancient artists and priests, they basically had this language of geometry and numbers that they didn't teach anybody, but they hid it within their artifacts, their architecture, and even their myths, so that you would have to kind of get trained into seeing this, or learning this language into seeing it. So that's how I stumbled onto your show, is through my research into these things. So, you know, my background is not into history. It's not into archaeology. It's not into any of these things. But just by following the research, just following where I was interested, it led me down this very interesting path. And now I could look at pictures and hieroglyphs or artifacts from other cultures, and my eye just knows how to read it. And then I could throw it on my computer and measure it to like prove that it's actually following these very strict guidelines of sacred geometry.
I want to rewind just to the part where you began talking about out-of-body experiences, and you said, I was never interested in Egypt.
Yeah.
So many interesting topics. When you start diving deep and going down the appropriate rabbit holes, you end up finding out, oh, this is, and it ends up being related to some other far-out topic that you weren't even originally going to look for. And by this point, I've been down a lot of those rabbit holes. I know the rooms where a lot of them end up. So I think that's a really cool point about your journey.
Agreed. And actually made me think of that there's a famous lady, I'll pull her up real quick, Dorothy Eady. That's the first time I heard about people having past life experiences in Egypt. I didn't realize that other people were have you come across anyone else like who also has past life experiences specifically in ancient Egypt?
I've been doing this for a long time, so there's a lot of people that have come forward to tell me, even personally, like we're not talking about famous people, just people that have read the books or have heard me speak, have told me that they've had almost identical experiences. And the reason why I was in the UFO community and is because a lot of these out-of-body experiences, which I knew were shamanic journeys, I would come in contact with beings that people describe in alien abductions or alien contact. So for me, it was never a spaceship. It was always this out-of-body experience, this spiritual journey. And then you come in contact with things that people describe as like, let's say, greys or like insectoid type beings, which is extremely weird to see.
Yeah, I'd say.
And so when I hear stories about aliens, my mind doesn't go to, oh, they're coming in these ships. For me, it's like this is part of a multi-dimensional, multiverse type astral spiritual experience that shamans since the beginning of time have been dealing with.
Shout out to DA in Humboldt, Texas. Yeah, so when it comes to UFOs and UAPs, I've been kind of, as you can see, I've been behind me. It's been a thing I've been into since I was a child. I mean, as time goes on, the more and more, and I haven't had these experiences you have, but just the more I think about it and the more evidence and stuff that comes forward, more I'm thinking like extra dimensional or spiritual as well. And so it's interesting to hear somebody who's like literally traveling there to, have the same opinion.
It's kind of like the theory or the description of Telos or Shambhala, where it's like this secret city or secret world that you can't have access to. And then once you gain access to it, it's there. And a lot of people believe that these beings could pop in and out of our reality, no problem. They can manifest and unmanifest, just like, let's say, Bigfoot.
I hear that one.
That's another great example of, I never went out looking for Sasquatch or Bigfoot videos, but the more you look into the true nature of reality and things, don't leave that one out. You got to look into that one too.
And, all these ancient stories or myths that we have is basically at one point in time, all of us, call it all a family of different beings, lived together, and something happened where the realms were separated. Humans got kicked out of the garden, and now we're here and we're separated from that world, but they can come and check in on us. So I'm coming from a very different perspective or a very different world where for me, this is like a multi-dimensional experience where 99.99% of my waking life is, physical Jason. But there are moments when I go to sleep and pop out and I'll have to deal with that world. So for me, it's just my reality. And there's different laws and rules and, there's no teachers. it's like you get thrown into it and you have to kind of learn how to go about your business and what are all these things that attach to you. And this is why a lot of people turn to God very quickly after these experiences, because you know, when you leave your body, you basically have to face your shit, like and that could be in the form of thought forms, emotions, entities, things of that nature. And you get really scared, like, oh, there's all this dark stuff. And it's what the shamans taught me. They're like, well, that's you. You're scared of yourself, and you got to learn how to work all through that until you can like pass outside of that.
Is it similar to like, the slight ego death you get when you take a psychedelic and something like that? Like, so, you take mushrooms on the wrong day and all of a sudden you're like, see yourself for who you truly are for a couple hours, and maybe you don't like it. Is it something like that?
It's similar. And, after going through these experiences, I became a fan of Terence McKenna, and I started to read all his books, and it absolutely fascinated me. So, and I've never done psychedelics at all.
Still?
Never. No, that was when I got into Terence McKenna. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, because everybody kept saying that the experiences that I was having, you could have those experiences on psychedelics. You could have those experiences on mushroom or ayahuasca or things of that nature, like DMT. And so I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to see if I can get there using these tools. And even though they were profound experiences, they did not ever touch the experiences I was having. So it's like they're good in their own category, what I would say. But what I'm describing, I've never experienced on psychedelics.
DMT included?
DMT included.
I really like categorizing and classifying things. So I think this is a really important point that you hit on. And a lot of people only end up experiencing one or the other, or really you just talked about three, these spontaneous out-of-body experiences where your body is whole and healthy. Then there's near-death experiences where the body undergoes severe trauma to the body or the brain, or just under sedation, right? If they accidentally give you too much sedation. And then the another part of that, though, is psychedelics, people that take powerful psychedelic substances and experience ego death. So how would you categorize or classify the differences between those? That's why it's good to get your perspective.
Well, even though I feel like I've died with that out-of-body experience, it was not, going through a tunnel, or I guess when you're out of body, you go through portals, but it was never like go into the light. It was never greeted by family members or anything like that. So it's almost like dying while you're alive. So So once you experience out of body travel, or being outside your physical body, and get used to that space, I would say there is no more fear of death. It's like literally the only fear of death is you leave all this behind. That is the biggest fear. But the actual stepping into it, that's a different story once you're used to it. With psychedelics, if you've had some very good if you've had some very good out-of-body experiences on psychedelics, you kind of don't want to leave. It's like you're in this other dimension, this other world, and it's like you've been there always. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to you're tapping into another self, living in another dimension or something, and you're just totally at ease or peace. And then when you come back, you're like, man, I really want to go back to dancing above that sacred forest, like as an electric amoeba or something, like.
Right.
But then, so and then death. What I would consider death is when you can't go back to your body. And when that time comes, I don't know what's going to happen with that experience.
Right. And that's a good point. From what I've observed, at least, and I'll try to pull up the name of the doctor in a minute. I watched a good episode with a fellow who's documented thousands of near-death experiences. Fortunately, some of those people, that did interviews, they were described, no, I've done psychedelics before in the past. The NDE is entirely different. It's not the same, because
Yeah, Don made a good point there. I wonder, in your research or the people you've talked to, do you find kids are more open to this kind of experience?
Certain kids,
Certain kids.
not every kid. Like when I was, I'll say going back almost 15 years or more. I met a kid once that, their family hired me because I was talking about this stuff, and they wanted me to speak to their child because basically since the kid was born, all he was talking about was his past lives. And he like knew about technology, and he knew how he died, and he was like angry that he died. He was angry that he had to come back and do this again because, so there are certain kids that I would say are super in tune to this. Like they remember their last life like an encyclopedia. They can answer like any question to you. So, for me, like I've had many past life experiences, and for me, they're all around the time you die. All right. So it's like almost every single experience that I've had in a past life is like reliving those moments before you pass, which I find really interesting.
I found the doctor's name is Dr. Jeffrey Long. I'm just going to flash this up really quick. I saw his episode on Danny Jones last year. It was a great listen. This just posted on the Matt Bell channel today. I've not had time to listen to it yet, but he's documented thousands of NDEs. Great data points for anyone who is interested in this phenomenon.
So when this first started happening, Jason, it was 2004, 2005-ish, limited internet, limited connectivity. How did you cope with that? like how did you, I don't know, deal with it?
It was 2002.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, it was 2002. So it was there wasn't, it was still a Yahoo search.
Right.
And there was no YouTube. There was one site I found back in the day, and I think it was called like educateyourself.edu or something.
Uh-huh.
And basically it was talking about if you're getting like sleep paralysis and getting attacked by entities, which I was, you need to learn how to make orgone generators and with crystals. And there was like instructions on this site in 2002, 2003, right?
Huh.
So I'm like, okay. And there was a crystal store nearby, and I bought crystals, and I built these orgone generators. I put them all over my room. And I think that's when I started to get obsessed with crystals, as you can clearly see.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with crystals except for one girl I dated when I lived in California. That's about it.
My best experiences with crystals are always the geode room at the museum. I could stay in that room for hours just looking at different colors, different formations. I think it's amazing.
But there was nobody to talk to. And when I did talk to people like my friends, they never look at you the same way again. There was one time where I came out to like a family member of mine, and it's so funny. It's like coming out. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of, yeah.
It's like,
it is.
Look, this is happening to me, and I couldn't bottle. It was all bottled up. I'm like, this is happening to me, and when I went out to use the computer, I saw that all their searches was like how to talk to somebody about schizophrenia.
Oh no.
So it's like I knew that I was going through something, but I was grounded, and I knew like I knew this wasn't like a psychosis. I knew this was kind of like this unraveling, and it just had to happen for me to get to where I am.
I'm slightly jealous, but also not. And so I guess the reason why I say that, at least to my question, like there must have been some times where you're like, man, F this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, at the beginning, it was the worst. So when people are like, man, I want to do this, I'm like, no, you don't. And the only way I could describe it was when this first started happening to me, these things would come into the room and reach in my body and pull me out. So I wasn't doing it on my own. I wasn't going out by myself. I was being forced out of my body by something else. And this thing would pull me out of my body, take me into outer space. I'd see the Earth below me, which is round. And I'd be shot back down
Good call.
onto different places on the planet, and they would leave me there. And for me, I didn't recognize anything. It was like being dropped off in a war zone. So for me, it was kind of that. My first book I wrote with Bob Mitchell, it was called Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. And the reason that was the title was because when I was being dropped off on the Earth, I didn't recognize it. And it was like I would be dropped off in like war zones, which is very traumatic. And then the thing would come back, pull me back up into outer space, and then shoot me back down through my roof into my body. So I would like basically wake up the next day white as a ghost. Like I was shaking. I couldn't talk to, it's like you're shell shocked. I couldn't tell anybody what was happening. No one would believe me. They put me in the nut house for sure if I would talk about these experiences. And like I say, you find God so quickly because I was praying to every single God I could think of. Please stop this from happening. I don't want to do this anymore. And then it did stop. Those type of experiences stopped. And that's when I started to get more into this kind of multidimensional shamanistic perspective or journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think you seem like a resilient guy, because I think a lot of people experiencing that over and over and over again it would break them. Was there a point where like you kind of came out the other side and you were like, okay, I can handle this, and you're looking at it more like a gift than anything else? Or
the truth is I had no choice.
Right.
It's almost like once you open that door, it's very hard to close. And when I first, and by the way, this is a long time ago, so I was single, I was living at home, you know, I didn't have a job anymore. So I had a lot of time to like process this. And then when you kind of go through life and you have to work, I'm married, you know, you have to have responsibilities. Those things started happening less and less and less. You know.
Okay.
Is this also maybe why some children have much stronger perceptions of these things, and simply as the older they get, they're taught that they need to be busy with other things, busy with this and that as part of our culture, and that it doesn't leave room for any of that.
Well, it's why kids are more likely to see ghosts and things like that. At least that's what they say. You know.
Yeah.
Well, not just be busy. You're literally told not to believe in those things. You're told these things are silly and bizarre and laughed at. So it's
like I was having past life memories and entities like shadows coming to visit me at night when I was a child. You know, so it has been going on like my whole life, but it didn't really happen until I was like in my 20s, right? And I remember running to my parents as a child, like telling them what was happening to me. And basically they would say, it's just a nightmare. Everybody has these things. So in my mind, it was completely normal. Whatever I was experiencing, it was just called a nightmare. And yeah, everybody had nightmares.
Right.
Yeah, that actually brings back a weird memory I have that I'm going to share live for some reason.
And that's where sleep paralysis or an out of body dream, you know, it's not a nightmare. Anybody can have a nightmare about something unpleasant when something weird is happening. You know that it's different.
But when you're a kid, and that's what I'm going to explain, you're a little confused, right? I remember I was eating cereal, getting ready for school, and my older brother. He's a classic older brother, just likes giving me crap, right? Shout out to Will if he's watching. But he's just staring at me. He's just looking at me like I'm the biggest dumbass in the world. And I was like, what? And he's like, you don't remember last night? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden it hit me. And I remember like being awake, but asleep at the same time, and like scaring the crap out of my entire family, like running around the house, saying crazy things. And I had this, I still can feel it now. I can invoke this feeling now, but it's this feeling of epic failure. Like I screwed up so badly that it's like the world is going to end. And this was like on my shoulders at like 12 years old. And I remember literally going to school thinking, I ruin everything, or like what the hell was that? And so I haven't thought about that in a long time, but that just popped in my head. I'm like, I wonder what that was.
Well, it's funny because remember that kid I talked about earlier? He was like so upset and angry that he did something wrong in his past life, and now he has to come back and live in this life so he can fix it. And he was so pissed off. And this kid was like 5, 6 years old. You know?
Yeah,
That's got to be the worst.
Yeah.
Apparently, according to my brother, I was saying like actually no, I even remember this. I remember my mom going, "Will you take him to his room, please? Please get rid of him." And my brother's walking me down the hallway, and I'm saying, "Will, did I screw everything up? Did I screw everything up?" And he's going, No, everything's fine, dude. You're fine." And then like the next morning, he's just staring at me like the biggest dumbass ever. But yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's strange, and we're not taught about these things. So, we just look like idiots. So,
I've experienced sleep paralysis, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so times, probably definitely more than 10. It's pretty rare though. It's very rare, but you always kind of remember that. And the natural instinct is always to try to get out, to try to finish waking up the rest of your physical body. And for me, it usually results in probably moaning and groaning, but I feel like I'm trying to articulate words, try to say stuff in the dream. So I like your point earlier about having room inside yourself. Maybe that's the trick.
Yeah.
When you find yourself in that paralysis situation, the answer is not trying to break out, it's further inside.
Well, it's a technique, and they teach it in meditation as well. It's like everybody thinks you have to push yourself out, but the truth is, it's like, let's say you close your eyes and you can let's say you can feel inside like the back of your head. It's almost like your eyes, you can feel them dropping inside, like they kind of like drop down into your body. So it's like you're kind of focusing everything within, and it's like then this kind of thing, it drops, and as it drops, like you can feel like a pop or a click. It's a very loud pop or a very loud click. You may see like a shot of light, like when that click happens, you see a big shot of light, and or you feel this very like warming, numbing sensation that starts in your stomach and then it moves through your body. That's the paralysis coming. So you can do that in like the meditation, and it's like once you drop in and you reach that place in, then you step out. That's how it works.
There's been some times where like I'm thinking it's about to happen, and then I like and then it doesn't, but it literally feels like I'm about to fall. I'm about to fall through my bed, and then I like stop myself. But you're kind of making me want to just let go and see where I end up, but not at the same time, because I don't want to get stuck in the loop.
Yeah, at the same time, I'm not envious of like multiple sequential spontaneous.
No.
Like it's happened enough that I can remember, but it's rare.
Yeah. I did want to bring up that Dorothy Eady again. She was the past life Egypt lady. Just to remark on the children thing. She was like basically at 3-4 years old, like telling people, specific memories from Egypt, from ancient Egypt, and she was so well. She was very accurate in what she said, and to the point where she was, I think, given an honorary title of an Egyptologist towards the end of her life, and she faced a lot of scrutiny, probably much like you would have if you were trying to come out and say all this stuff,
Yeah, and it's weird because all I've been talking about for like the past 2 years is like Egyptian and ancient cultures and mysticism and thing like that, because that's where this is all kind of taken me. But and this is also why maybe mainstream doesn't take me seriously, because it's like, where did you get your information? I'm like, meditation.
Akashic records don't count when you cite them as a source. So what's the deal?
Right. So a lot of these things that I've discovered, it's from sitting with it for years. And it's like suddenly you get this kind of like dream, or you just like, oh my God, that's how it fits. And then I come and I go on the computer and I piece it together. I'm like, damn, I can't believe I did that.
So this is probably a rabbit hole, but briefly, could you describe like meditation is kind of a loaded word now. Like it's like almost a popular word, like it's become popularized. Meditation, mindfulness. There's very simplistic versions of it all over online and whatnot. I was a mental health counselor. I've taught meditation. I've done a lot of quote meditation in my life, but really what I know it to be is, sitting with yourself, paying attention to your thoughts and not doing anything about it, not chasing, not judging yourself, not judging your thoughts. You mentioned you really had to sit with it, with this experience. So you had to learn to meditate like while you're having these experiences. Is that what you're saying?
I had to learn how to meditate to integrate these experiences.
Okay.
And my type of meditation is not like anybody's. Well, I mean, we all do the same thing, but I'm not like saying a mantra in my head. I'm not visualizing anything. All I'm doing is I'm trying to shut the mind off and breathe and focus on the feeling of my body. So I'm trying to get more body sensitivity and be more aware of present, how I'm feeling, how the energy is moving. If a thought comes up, if an emotion comes up, what you do is you see where it's coming from, you let it go. You kind of breathe through it. That's my meditation. Or the Qigong, which is my standing meditation, which is physically standing and moving mostly my arms very slowly to kind of bring in energy or to release energy. And those are my meditations.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool, Jason. Very cool.
What you mentioned about observing your own thoughts almost in a third person perspective, like, oh, my mind keeps wandering towards this. I'm worried about that. I'm planning in the future, or I have remorse for something in the past. And once you step out and zoom out and look at those thoughts, it's much easier to deal with them. Oh, I need to deal with my anxiety about the future or my remorse about the past.
Yeah, I think people get stuck in like identifying with those thoughts and not realizing that they're actually a watcher of those thoughts. Those thoughts are just happening like the ticker on ESPN. They come and they go. And you can actually be separate from them. And most people, there's a lot of people go their entire life without noticing that. And I think that's a shame.
Well, most people have this kind of inner dialogue, this inner voice that continually plays and works throughout the day and night, keeps you up. What I found going down the road of shamanism and is basically not all of your thoughts are yours. Not all of your emotions are yours. And it's just like a radio receiver. You're picking up things from your environment, from your family, from your friends. And it's like you can pick up emotions or even sickness and thoughts just by being with the wrong people. And then you bring that stuff home with you and you're like, why am I thinking this? Like, why am I feeling this? There's no reason for this. And so through meditation and through, the shamanic work, like the Qigong, what you are doing in that meditation is this mine? Where did I pick this up from?
That makes a lot of sense to me. I've never done that with meditation before. I always just assumed they were mine, but you're right. Like whatever was going on in my mind while I'm meditating, I could have picked up at work from someone else or like, that kind of thing, or who knows where from,
I absolutely agree with your assessment. This thing is a receiver. And if you keep the knob turned to the wrong channel all the time, you're going to have the wrong stuff going on. It's important to dial into the right channels.
I don't think that's like, crazy because like, it's like if you drive, every time you get in your car, you listen to death metal, you're going to be pissed off when you get into traffic, right? And so we're talking about just simplistically, like you can literally change the dial, like in your environment, you can change your environment. Like you said, be around different people, change the people that you're around, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll give a good example of this is, let's say you're studying with a guru in India and it's like an ashram and, there's this kind of communal kitchen. So you have the volunteers, they're cooking the food for everybody. And the yogi will walk through the kitchen and he'll look and he'll see somebody who's not in a good mood preparing food. And he'll just be like, you out of the kitchen now, because as they're preparing the food, they're putting that, whatever they're going through, whatever they're dealing with, they're putting that energy in the food. preparing the food with it. And then someone goes and sits down and they eat that food, and suddenly that person has a bad day, or they have an emotional outburst, or they're angry at something, and they don't understand why. Maybe it's because they picked up on that energy. We're all like quantum fields, whatever label you want to put on it. Like, we're picking up information. I just read this study somewhere where it had to do with sweat. It's like someone was like working out, and they took their sweat, and someone smelled it, and they checked their brain waves, and it just didn't register anything. And they took sweat from someone who jumped out of an airplane, and they put it under there, and their brain waves went off the chart with anxiety.
Wow.
So it's like we can pick up on these subtle things that we're not aware of, but it's like in the field. Is it in the scent? Is it like whatever the chemistry is? Whatever the electro
of an obscure paper that I read. This had to be 5 or 6 or 8 years ago. I don't remember, but somebody could sniff out like Parkinson's disease or maybe Alzheimer's as well. It may have been a type of dog. I don't think it was a person. It was a type.
No,
of
it was
dog.
a person.
It was a person.
There was a person that would that could smell Parkinson's because what they said was that their husband had Parkinson's, and they had this smell to them that was a very unique smell to the husband. And after he passed away, she went to the hospital and she started to smell that same smell with other people that had Parkinson's. So that's where she could walk through a room and smell people. Wow. And she could say, you have it or you have it. And they've been training dogs to even pick up cancer.
Just a quick, found the article. Yeah, it was from 2022. Maybe it was more recent than I thought. That you triggered a memory of me reading that in the last few years. That was great.
The food thing really kind of tripped me out a bit because it made me think about, like, you're in a hurry, you go through the drive-through, and whoever's working there is pissed off at something, and they make your food, and then they transfer that to you in a way. I had never really considered that. But I thought about, like,
that and all the sawdust they put in those Burger King burgers don't help either.
But putting like positive intention into food, I know is a thing. So that makes sense. But I just never thought about it in the context of going to a restaurant and like putting your energetic like future in the hands of whoever's making your food.
But I think this is
the blessing before the meal, right?
That's what I'm trying to say, is that I think that this is the actual philosophy behind blessing your food before you eat it. Now it's a religious thing, but I think like if you stripped everything away and you're looking at it from like an actual energy, scientific, whatever is tapped into that food, do you have the power to actually switch and change those frequencies before you consume it and take on those patterns?
Very interesting.
We probably couldn't just turn fast food into healthy food by praying really hard on it, though. So diet is still important. You got to eat food that's fresh, that's recently been in the light,
For sure, but adding some intention to it, I think it would help.
Well, I had this joke so many years ago, and it was a joke, and now I'm taking it like seriously, because when you have like a child, you give them like cake or something that's really bad for them, and they're eating it, they're like nom, 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 they're making these M sounds as they're eating it, and we know that these M sounds, these vibrations of humming, actually change the body. They change the frequency, just like how they. So I'm thinking like, if you're like eating bad food and you're like humming or using that M sound vibration, is it transmuting that bad energy into actually the body will take it?
I'm definitely going to hum the next time I eat a candy bar.
Very cool. So we brought you on the show because we wanted to talk about your book and your article in Pharos magazine, which we'll get to. Shout out Institute of Natural Philosophy and Ricardo and everyone else who may or may not be watching.
Thanks for everyone that's in the chat. This is great. We like all the participation. We really appreciate having everyone on the show.
We do. And thank you, Sean, for recommending the book Into the Light by Dr. Lerma, a book about NDEs. Did any of you guys read that book? Or
I actually bought that book down the street at my local used bookstore last summer. Have not read it, but it's definitely entitled Into the Light. Think about children's NDEs.
Well, recommended by Sean Tester.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
The other night I was bored, and there was nothing I felt like watching, and so I put on one of my old favorite movies, Deep Impact with Elijah Wood, and it just is the first time that I was like 10 or 12. I was about the same age Elijah Wood was when that came out, and that's what really kind of got me thinking about, like, whoa, we could get a giant rock flung at us and smash into the earth. I think I'm a believer, and I'm open to being argued with, but I'm a believer that what part of what caused a younger Dryas was an impact. What do you guys think? Do you impact, solar flare? What do you think?
I think that it must have been. Well, I can't say it must have been. I think we may have had both.
Yeah, I've been thinking that too.
Because of that layer of black soot found all over the planet. That is a huge impact. To have that type of impact, or to have that on the Earth. But I know that there's a lot of theories about huge solar flares hitting the Earth as well, and it possibly could have melted the ice as well, caused great flooding.
Yep.
So
yeah,
rapid cooling of the Earth. That black mat layer that you mentioned is important because they're spread out so far across the North American continent.
Yeah, for those of us who are watching don't know what the Younger Dryas is, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a period of rapid cooling at the end of the last ice age that many people think was either caused by comet impact that fragmented over North America, and then the fragments spread out across the world around 10,500 BC. It's interesting to think that like something that violent and dramatic could happen at the same time as a solar flare that was almost equally as dramatic and violent. Because normally these things are so spaced out. You know, you could have like a civilization rise and then fall without something like that even happening. And these two things happened at that one time. It makes me, or around the same time, it makes me think that, like, you know, whoever was running the simulation hit reset. The NES game glitched, and they were like, "Screw this, reset." And I don't know. It's just wild to think about.
Pat Brees, time period has some important information. So basically, the last ice age was over. At one point, it was as warm as it is today on Earth, and then very rapidly returned to the depth of the ice age, way faster than it took to get out of it. And then even faster than that, snap right back out of it later on. That's what the Younger Dryas time period is.
Thank you. And Pat Brees says Earth got hit many times since it formed, just saying life started over many times. Totally agree. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
So typically when the Earth gets warmer, it melts the ice, sea levels rise. When the Earth is colder, ice caps grow, sea levels fall. What we observed at the beginning of the Younger Dryas, the meltwater pulses, the Earth got colder and the oceans went up at the same time. Typically it doesn't happen on slow, continuous change. So they suspect a fragment of a comet might have hit an ice sheet and knocked a chunk of an ice sheet out that was so big into the ocean that it melted, but it quenched the ocean, interrupted the ocean circulation patterns at the same time, which is a valid hypothesis to explain the geological history data that we have.
Totally. And it makes sense to me just because when civilization supposedly restarted in Mesopotamia, is probably the furthest away from that comet impact, you know? So that makes sense to me.
I got this video, or did you want to say on history? This is a slight shifting gears, but you know, we go multiverses.
It's your turn. It's your turn, bro.
I was going to go quantum with this one. Y'all know about the double slit experiment, one of the most important, profound experiments that teaches us about the nature of reality and how important it is to be a conscious observer. Well, this gal did the double slit experiment at home. This is about a 15-minute video. I think I fast forwarded to the cool part. We'll watch maybe the last 2 minutes to see the results.
Oh, did you send me this earlier this week? Somebody did.
I think so, and I have one of these green lasers over my dresser. I want to do this. I want to get a fog machine.
I love chains or cat toys.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I love
than like this time
to do things on their own. They're like, I need to find out myself. That sounds crazy.
type. But yeah, if you're going to be using a laser for presenting or experiments or playing with your cat, just make sure it isn't one that's going to burn someone's eyes out.
Anyway, it was worth buying the smoke machine. This experiment looks just magical in real life, and all I've done to capture it is use my phone, nothing fancy. I set the double slit up a few meters away and blocked all the lights and turned on the smoke machine, and all of these beams suddenly became visible. Here you can see that there are beams of light going to all of the dots of the double slit pattern. But to see it even more clearly, let's turn around and look toward the laser. And now, so many beams become visible. The double slit doesn't split the light up into two beams. It splits the light into many, many beams.
So why was this experiment such a revelation for me? Well, it felt like I was actually seeing the light be a wave for the first time.
Let me show you what I mean with this laser. Here you can see the narrow beam of the laser, but if I put this paper in the way, a wave should spread out. And yeah, that's exactly what the laser does. But to see it more clearly, let's add some smoke.
Wow.
This looks almost unreal. The laser beam is spread out, but only in this one plane, just like we'd predict for a wave. If I remove the paper and put in the double slit instead, you can see the two sides of the beam interfere and cancel out. Again, just like a wave should.
Seeing this was the first time that I actually felt in my gut.
So very neat, and I hope to try that out myself.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. And with the idea that a particle could be both a wave and a particle at the same time, or a photon at the same time, like a lot of woo-woo gets attached to that. And we're the creators and this and that. But I think there is something significant to that information. I just don't think that we know exactly what that is yet. Jason, do you have any insight on the double slit experiment and in your work?
No, but it may just be, again, showing other possibilities of a multidimensional world. Many people describe it as a multidimensional world. It's all here like an accordion in front of us, and we just have to open it up and step into it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I don't know that our brains, like as in this version of or this part of evolution or whatever you want to call it, is equipped to do so. Maybe yours is more than most, because you get to I don't want to get to is the wrong word, but you experience a lot of things that other people don't so it makes me think that we're getting there to we're evolving to a place where our brains can interact with other dimensions in a more real way.
Yeah. Or maybe our consciousness is a particle and a wave as well, and we just switch back and forth experience.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Pat Bree says Jason's research is proving our ancestors kept records of their knowledge, but something happened and we lost that understanding. And that's actually an awesome segue into Jason's research.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to pull up is just his website. 1 second. The Crystal Sun.
Yeah. Shout out to Pat. How's it going, man?
Yeah, shout out Pat. Thanks for joining the show, my new friend. So this is Jason's website. You want to tell us about your website and you briefly spoke about these books and how they came to be.
Sure. This website started off as a crystal website. As you can see, I sell crystals. And then once I started to write books, I put it up here. I actually used to be the creative director for Tesla Magazine, which was out here in Hamilton, Ontario. So there's some free issues of Tesla Magazine, which you might enjoy.
Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, guys.
This is just where it's just a landing page where you can find all my stuff, all my work, and up to date where the article is. But yeah, I have to update it soon. It's still, I think it's probably about 10 years old, this website.
You didn't mention Nick Tesla when you were telling us your bio earlier. How did you get in tune with the work of Nick Tesla?
I was working with a person. He was actually a friend of mine. He still is a friend of mine. And he was making a documentary on Tesla. And he said, "Hey Jay, you want to like come tour the US and we'll go like to all these places around the US that talk to people about Tesla?" And I'm like, "Sure." So we did like a whole road trip making a documentary. And that's actually when I went to NASA. So that was during the filming of that documentary. We knew somebody who had the Tesla magazine here, and we wanted to do a couple issues, and they just kind of gave us the magazine to take it over. So we put a bunch of articles together and put it together. My background as well is in graphic design. So I do all the artwork and pictures here. But yeah, so, and yeah, I'm coming shortly within the month. I'm going to be in Los Angeles at the Conscious Life Expo, where I'll be talking about all this stuff that sharing with you.
Yeah, this is in February.
The month coming up soon, folks.
Very soon, yeah.
In LA. Shout out. Usually we covered this last week, but shout out to the people in that area suffering from the wildfires or the fires. We're thinking about you guys. Hope everything's going okay for you. I was playing around with your website. You can order the books off here as well. Just wanted to shout out to everyone. You can also do get the crystals. You can also find his books like other places they sell books, correct?
Amazon, yeah. It's much faster on Amazon because here I have to send it from Canada I put my signature in it from here. So that's where you get it from the website.
Got it. I also wanted to share quickly, Jason is going to be speaking at Contact in the Desert.
I recently learned about this event. There's a whole bunch of people on the lineup that I would be excited to see, and you've performed there several times, so we'd love to hear about it from you.
Yeah, love Contact in the Desert. It's so much fun. You get to see so many people that you watch on Ancient Aliens or History Channel or A&E. George Norrie, host of Coast to Coast.
Yeah, I saw that.
Richard Dolan. Like, there's so many great people that are here. And you get to hang out with them. You get to go to their talks. I've been going since about 2016. 2016. And I look forward to this. There's me next to Clyde Lewis, good friend of mine at Ground Zero Radio.
Cool.
On the other side.
Yeah.
There you are.
How many people come to these events?
Oh, this is huge. There's got to be like 10,000 people.
Wow, I had no idea, because my reference point was Cosmic Summit last year, and there's only a few hundred people at that. So that
still seemed really big for obscure topics such as Dave and I are interested in. It was really awesome to meet that many people.
Yeah, is there any like standout, Jason? Any standout like memories from Contact in the Desert? Any transformative experiences you've had there, or people you've met that changed how you thought about things?
Well, I just love doing the panels I do a lot of panels, so I get to sit next to people who are quite famous. For example, I know Travis Walton pretty well.
No way.
Yeah, so that's always fun. We always every year we go out for dinner at Contact in the Desert.
You go out with Travis Walton, or there's like a bunch of
like a small table. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, but that just so I saw that movie when I was a kid, Fire in the Sky, changed my life. So what an amazing guy Travis is. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
He came to my wife's birthday party and he played guitar for us. So that was pretty good.
No way.
Yeah. So you get to meet a lot of really interesting people.
Does he go?
What's that? Yeah, he goes.
Does he go regularly?
Yeah. I don't think he's missed any of them. So I'm surprised I don't see his name up there.
Okay, very cool. So you get to meet cool people, interesting people, famous people.
Yeah. And it's always fun hanging out with George Norrie. I don't know if you know George Norrie from Coast to Coast.
I don't know him, but yeah, I know you know him. Yeah.
He is the entertainer. Like when he enters the room, it's like his room, and he loves singing, so he'll come out and pick up the microphone and start singing to people. It's really funny. But like not it just warms your heart is what I'll say. It's like it's amazing to be in his presence.
Yeah, certain people have that magnetism to them, don't they? That they just can own a room like that.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. So I always look forward to going to, they call it like the George Norrie dinner or something, where George Norrie will host this big dinner party, and he's so funny. He's so on the ball that like it just makes such a fun like evening.
And what are you going to be presenting this year? Can you give us a sneak peek? Or
I don't actually know what I'm going to be presenting at Contact this year. But I know at Conscious Life, I'm going to be talking about basically the star knowledge, which I'm just sharing a little with you today. And I'm going to be talking about the Egyptian posture. So I'm actually going to be teaching a class at Conscious Life Expo about the different meditations and postures and what it does.
Okay, very cool.
Fascinating.
I wanted to pull up. Let's get into your book a little bit, the Astral Genesis. When did you write that?
Astral Genesis I wrote in 2003, and I was never meant to write it. As in, I was writing a different book, and I came across this information, basically stumbled onto this discovery or rediscovery, and I had to kind of stop writing the book I was originally writing and completely change it to this kind of book that connects the stars and mysticism to ancient cultures, and that there's this sacred geometry language, this hidden language of sacred geometry within ancient artwork, which completely blew me away back then and still blows me away today. In fact, today I even emailed you because I just figured something new out, and those moments don't happen too often to figure something out.
Yeah. Shout out to my mom. She remembers that middle of the night meltdown. She's watching live. Hi, Mom. Say hi to my mom, guys. She'll love that.
Hello, Mom.
Jason's in Toronto or in Ontario near you. Just FYI.
Yep. I am.
So I wanted to ask just a couple questions about the book. So, like, in what ways does the connections you've made about ancient astrological code and all that stuff, like, is there a benefit to like us in modern society, or? No,
there's no the only benefit is to reconnect with your roots, to reconnect with the most ancient knowledge that humans have. It's going back to what made us humans. And I think the reason we're standing here today, the reason we have technology, social structure, all these things has to do with understanding the stars and the as above, so below principle. So my findings and what these books are about is the relationship between the stars and what's happening on Earth, and how there's stories and, let's say, the zodiac characters, and how they're widespread around the planet. So we may have, let's say, a story in Sumeria of the gods and goddesses, some mythology. And then you go to Greek mythology, and they have the exact same themes, the exact same meanings, but the characters are changed, the location is changed. So it doesn't seem like the same story, but when you really strip everything away, it's the same motif, it's the same theme, and it's giving you the same information. And you find these repeating patterns of myth throughout various cultures, even across seas. So you'll see it in Mesoamerica. You see it in South America. You see it in North America. You see it in Japan, China, all over. And my book was not just comparing like comparative religions, comparing the myths and the stories and breaking them down into themes and motifs, but breaking them down into astrological terms. So let's say when they're talking about a giant hunter, chasing women, we're talking about the constellation of Orion and the Pleiades, but this is the way they would tell these stories and pass them on is by creating a story and placing it on the stars and how it reflected when you see the stars in the heavens, what plays out on Earth. And these are how the myths are created. But I've taken it a step forward by tracing the geometry of these artifacts and these art depictions of these ancient cultures, where they actually hid the story of the stars in the actual artifact itself. And you have to have a very trained eye to decode and to see that there's very specific mathematical formulas or mathematical angles and measurements that create up the pictures or the artifacts or even the architecture that relate entirely to the cycles of time and the movement of the sun, moon, and planets and stars.
Yeah, so a little bit of a cheeky joke when you were like, add nothing, because it's everything, right? It's where we come from. It's who we are. It's why we're here almost,
The first thing I thought of earlier with 23.5, those are the first 3 prime numbers, right? It's everything.
Yeah, I had another question. So like, how does your background in mysticism and out-of-body experiences influence these interpretations, if at all?
Well, I came to this through mysticism. So I was really interested in reading the ancient texts. So one of my favorite pieces is the pyramid text of Unas. So this is the oldest text found about 4,500 years ago. And I just love getting into the mystical side because like when you're looking at ancient religions, especially with Egypt, it's all about the afterlife. It's like what happens after you die. And they were very, very detailed. So from someone that has out-of-body experiences, I want to go back to these sources to see what they believed, because for them, death was something very important. And they spent their whole life preparing for it. And as I was going through it with the mindset of they're going to teach me something about the afterlife, I found something different, that it wasn't about the afterlife. It was actually the journey of the sun through the stars. It was the solar motif that was mirrored onto the life of us. So it was kind of inseparable. The cycles of the stars and the sun and the moon is the human life cycle. And to understand the human life cycle, you had to understand these movements of the ebb and flow of creation.
So in the book, it kind of connects sort of a universal astrological code. Is there a go-to piece of archaeological evidence that you like to go to show that?
There are so many, but I think today I was working pretty much all morning on the tablet of Shemesh.
Okay.
And,
is that what you were sharing on X? Can I pull that up quick?
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. But I have, if you want, I can pull up something better.
Yeah, you do. You go.
Because I have it already laid out for you, so you don't have to scroll.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, I like your humbleness and to send me a message and be like, hey, I made a mistake, but I've made a new discovery, which is even better.
That's also really important to note when we talk with Tyrone and Ricardo. They're the same mentality. We're seeking the truth. We want to find out the truth. And part of that is being able to admit, hey, in the past, I was trying to integrate data and I didn't have all the data. I'm integrating it differently now. It's not like saying right or wrong is the end of the world.
That's
right.
And
shout out to Ricardo from History, Myths, and Legends and the Institute of Natural Philosophy, and Tyrone from Rebirth of the Word. Check out their YouTubes and their X profiles. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So what I'll just show you quickly. Okay. Do you see the screen?
Yep, we do.
Is it big enough? Let me see.
It is perfect. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So this is an illustration or a tracing I did of the tablet of Shemesh. And Shemesh or Shamash is an Akkadian god and is known as the god of the sun. And his sister is Ishtar, which is the goddess of Venus, the planet Venus. She's also the goddess of fertility and war and love. Now, many people are familiar with this and they look at this and they go, oh, there's these 3 little guys here. These are the humans. And he's holding technology, and there's a Stargate in the center there. And this is a giant, like this is the Nephilim, this is the gods, the giants that walk the earth. And so we just look at it and we don't really understand what's going on here. You need a very trained eye. Now, I just put this where it says 15 degrees sun travels per hour. And this is a truth of how we divide the heavens. So the sun moves through the sky at 15 degrees per hour. This is how we get our whole time. This is division of time. If you could see these two guys at the top of this, they're holding these ropes, and the rope is holding up the table, but it's holding up the sun disk of Shamash. So that symbol is the star of Shamash, which is the symbol of the sun. And you have these two people holding the ropes. And this goes to an ancient motif of the rope pullers, which you find in Egypt and other places. And what the rope pullers are is you got two gods that pull a rope, and it pulls the sun across the horizon. So over the year, because our Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees, we get our seasons. And as we go around the sun, the placement of the sun on the horizon, it rises north, east to southeast. So it travels across the horizon and back. And this is the cycles of the sun. So what is happening here, I'll just put this here, is you see that I put 15 degrees, this green line, and I'm just showing that the arms are all angled at this 15-degree angle. So they're trying to speak to us to say hours. So they're pulling the sun through the hours, and we know that, from the equinox, we have 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. And then as we go to winter solstice, we lose light per hour, and then we gain light per hour going to summer solstice. All right, so, and this is from 880 BCE, by the way. And he's holding a tool in his hand. Most people don't know what that is, but in the Descent of Inanna text, that tool is called the lapis rod and line, which is an astrological measuring tool that measures heaven and earth. Okay, so it's a tool. It's a measuring tool of the sky. All right, let me go back to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this composition with different line angles on it. So for example, here's 28.5 degrees, which is an 18.6 year cycle of the moon. And when we place it on certain characters, you can see the character, the small character here with the horns. I didn't draw it in, but this character, his suit, whatever he's wearing, is in water sign. So it has these squiggly lines all over it. And his arms are all set up to this 28.5 degree, which is the major lunar declination cycle of 18.6 years. And you can see this character too, his arm is also set like this. And it's interesting, the eyes are lined up between this character and this character by 28.5, and from his foot directly into the pupil is 28 degrees. And you can see these lines where the hand is, where it cuts. It goes directly through the eyes and directly through the arms. So what I'm trying to show here is that there's a mathematical composition that's embedded within the artwork itself that tells you a story about celestial cycles. If we continue forward, the angles change as we go to this character. So the middle character here is more set up to 23.5 degrees, which is the yearly cycle of the solstices and equinoxes. And you can see the rope here that pulls the sun is also set to 23.5 degrees.
Wow.
And you can see that it's from his eye and from his ear, it actually holds the disk of the sun exactly. So it's 23.5 degrees from his eyes and ears to the sun disk and the table. Now,
wow.
if we go forward, this is the minor lunar declination, which is the opposite, but it's also an 18.6 yearly cycle at 18.5 degrees of the moon. And you can see that this person who represents the moon here, this arm is set to 18.6. And from this arm to the eye is 18.6. And from this guy's eye to Shemesh's eye is 18.6. To the base of the throne is 18.6. And also Shemesh's arm, and from his throne to the level here is 18.6. So it's showing you that it has the moon angles and the solar angles in it as well. And I showed you the time thing as well. But here's also very interesting. If we just measure, just measure the thing. So we know that this is the major lunar cycle, the minor lunar cycle, and the solar cycle, these three people. Mm-hmm. When we measure them, we realize that the entire composition is created using these three measuring tools plus the measuring tool that he's holding. So as you can see, everything lines up depending on what it is. And even Shamash, if we take these three lines and we put it from the bottom of the throne all the way up the back to the top of the head, these three figures equal the size of Shemesh. So it's three equal aspects of the solar lunar deity, which is Shemesh. And you can see when you put them at the bottom here and you line them up, the blue, the red, and the darker blue, and then you add this measuring tool, you get his throne. And if you just do the lunar and what he's holding, it gets you the edge of the thing. So it's all done mathematically. Every part of this thing is a mathematical jigsaw puzzle. And even the heads, see how the heads are tilted? It's a 7-degree tilt. And like I said, these are the moon. And what does the moon do? It's called the moon is nodding. So the moon's rotational axis being tilted about 7 degrees relative to the orbital plane. This tilt is similar to the Earth's axis at 23.5 degrees. So they're even putting the nodding or the rocking motion of the moon into this composition. Now, what was driving me crazy was his tool. Because it wasn't giving me a clean number. I couldn't get 23.5 degrees. And I know that there is, I'm always wrong. The artist is always right, right? So I had to figure this out. It was a mystery to me. And I just figured it out this morning. And that's why I emailed you. But basically, when you measure this, it goes directly into the center of the star of Ishtar at 21.6 degrees. And I was like, what is 21.6 degrees? And I looked it up, and the 26 or 21.6 degrees is the 8-year cycle of Venus and Earth's dance that creates the pentagram.
Oh, wow. And you just made this discovery literally this morning.
That's right. And the Star of Ishtar, so this symbol right here is the Star of Ishtar, which is the symbol for the planet Venus.
Wow.
So about 3,000 years ago, there was a knowledge of, they knew precisely the motion of the stars and the planets, precisely the cycles of the sun and the moon. And it's clearly shown in their artwork using sacred angles and sacred geometry. So it's like when you're looking at this and you're saying, oh, this is just like the giant Shamash, he's a god. This is like a portal. This is the symbol of the sun. This is the symbol of the sun, symbol of the planet Venus, and this is the symbol of the moon. So this is Nana, so the three gods. And so this is a composition of the astrological or celestial movements. And like I said, I don't know how I figured this out, but it's not just there. This goes all over the place. And when I mean all over the place, the article that I wrote, you can go to Egypt. So this is a couple hundred years after the Tablet of Shamash, and you can see this whole composition. This is in Dendera. And for example, if you look at this image of Khepri and the soul, the wings, if we look at this image here, and you can see the Waz scepters. You see they're not perfect. You see how they're not perfect down here?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all off. Like even the head is different. Like there's subtle differences. This is bigger than this over here.
Yep, once more.
If you actually measure it, you get the same measurements, 28.5 degrees, 23.5 degrees. So this is the lunar. Yes.
Akkadian and Egyptian, right?
Yes, but it also goes, I found this in Bolivia as well, and in Peru.
Wow.
I found this also in Central America. So the composition of the gods, for example, so here's Anubis, which is the god of the underworld, the god of death. He protects the dead. His whole body is composed in this 18.5 degrees and 28.5 degrees. And that is the moon. So it's nighttime. So what do jackals do at night is they howl at the moon. So he's created in these lunar dimensions. Whereas Horus, his whole body is created to the movement of time. Remember, the falcon flies through the sky just like the sun.
Yeah.
So he flies through the sky at 15 degrees per hour, and he represents the sun's life, which is 23.5 degrees. So his whole body is created in the angles of 23.5 degrees. That's
wild. So, with math and geometry being a universal language, the issue with interpreting a lot of this stuff, I imagine, is trying to get rid of your modern lens and look at this through an ancient lens. It sounds like you got the perfect tool to do that, huh?
Yes. And so, for example, this is also from a tomb that's about 3,000 years old, and it has the solar boat. You got Khafre holding the sun, and you have, the right eye of Ra, the left eye of Horus, and the left eye is the lunar eye, which is the moon, and the right eye is the solar eye. And if you just zoom into this and measure it, it's 23.5 degrees is the sun eye, and the moon eye has this little notch here. And if you measure it, it's again 28.5 degrees and 18.5 degrees. So they're placing this math of these celestial measurements directly into their artwork for us to figure out. Even the serpent, if you count the folds of the serpent, you get about 18 and a half or 19. And that's the 19-year metonic cycle of the moon, or the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle. So all of these symbols are astrological in nature. And this is what the hidden language is. And it's become so obvious once you start to look for this or know the language, that this is an image of the staff god, basically standing on the basket of life. So this is the water basket that represents life. In the middle, you have the Ankh, and the rods here are the Waz scepters. And if you actually just draw the lines and follow this design, again, it's laid out at 23.5 degrees, which is the tilt of the earth and the seasons. And then if we jump to Bolivia, so the complete opposite end of the world, again, you have a solar deity holding two staffs, two rods. And if you measure to the eye, see the eyes of the rods, to the composition of the body, even this vest, I don't know if you can see his little vest here, it's all set up to 23.5 degrees.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to stop sharing just because I just want to let you to sink this in. I found examples going back all the way to Göbekli Tepe.
So Pillar 43, does Pillar 43 have that?
It actually does, because if you look at those V's going across, measure the V's, they're exactly 24 degrees.
Wow.
And the tilt of the earth at 12,000 years ago was actually 24 degrees, not 23.5.
Wow. So it's really that precise.
It's extremely precise.
Yeah. Because, things like Venus they could see with their naked eye, but the fact that they were so precise about that and then why?
I believe that they were, in my opinion, is that sacred artifacts are sacred because they hold the knowledge of the stars within it. And it's only those that know how to read and get that information that can actually communicate with these objects. That's why priests or trained people could look at an object and understand its purpose. In fact, this whole notion of tombs, like these pharaohs had to be buried with all these artifacts for their ego. For me, my new opinion of this is that these are time vaults for the future. And all of those paintings on the walls, all those reliefs, all those artifacts, all those stories are actually information and knowledge that is vital for humankind to understand the cycles.
Right. Well,
And
Pillar 43 supposedly tells the story of the comet that hit during the Younger Dryas. So that would be vital information to have, I would think.
well, let me just pull up Pillar for you. Let me pull up that pillar.
For those that don't know in the audience, Göbekli Tepe is an ancient human settlement that was found in Turkey from about 10, 11,000 years ago that really pushed back the timeline of when we thought humans had the technical capability to move around large pieces of stone.
Not necessarily civilization in general, but because the book is still out on whether they were hunter-gatherers or civil, or like static people. But they definitely had the ability to do that 10,000 years ago.
Yep.
Okay, so here's Pillar 43. Just got to pop it up there.
Yeah, we got to accept it on the screen share. Forgot about that.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So as you can see, I just kind of traced it for you with the main things. This is my opinion, obviously. I look at this and I see the upper world and the lower world. And these are also, and there you go. The V's that you're talking about is 24 degrees.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I believe this is the path of the sun. And so that you got Cygnus, you have Aquila. These are all constellations, by the way. You have Lyra, you have Draco. I believe this is the pole, the elliptical pole, the northern hemisphere. And then in the underworld, you have Scorpio, Hydra, Lupus, Centaurus, and I believe the goose is actually Ninhursag and Geb, the oldest earth deities, the oldest earth goddesses were depicted as geese. So, that's why the god Geb had a goose on his head, because he was the god of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Ninhursag from Sumeria was depicted with the goose, the goose and the golden egg. This is where all this stuff comes from. And why is a goose so important? Because a goose, and this is just my theory, by the way, I don't know that this is exactly that, but the goose is the master of the three realms. It swims in the water, it lays its eggs and walks on land, and it can fly in the air. Same like a duck. They're the masters of the three worlds.
Same with UAPs.
Same with UAPs.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's why they call you a quack, by the way.
Yeah. Wow, really? I had no idea. Did you just make that up?
I did, yes.
Okay, it was like whoosh.
Can I ask what your thoughts or analysis is on the three items across the top of this pillar illustration? You got them depicted as the sun
Yes.
and the horizon, but I've sort of seen these as being related to handbags from other Mesopotamian and South American figures.
My interpretation is what you're looking at. These are horizon lines. Yeah. And this is the arc of the sun during different times of the sun. So when you have the summer solstice, you have the biggest arc on the horizon, and equinox is equinox. And then a winter solstice, you have the smallest arc. Yeah. And it's interesting because I looked at these animals and I don't agree with what mainstream talks about them. I see a tiny little bird, I see a squirrel, and I see a frog. That's what I see. And during the winter solstice in Turkey, that's when the spawning of the birds takes place.
Yep.
Okay. During the equinoxes, that's when squirrels are the most active. They hunt and gather their nuts during the equinoxes. Yep. And during the summer solstice in June, that's when the frogs are the most alive and they sing at night. All right. Another really interesting thing is that this pillar is cut. You see how this pillar is cut on this one side here from Cygnus to the top? It's like stylized. Well, if you take the 23.5 degree line here, which is this is what I put here in red, and you turned it to 37.2 degrees latitude, which is the location of Göbekli Tepe, it's at 37.2. That summer solstice line is perfectly aligned with the cut of the pillar.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I believe that my personal opinion is this pillar represents the upper and lower world of constellations and the path of the sun during the year. And then it depicts the 3 times of years, or the 3 stations of the sun, and the different arc sizes in the horizon.
Very interesting. We had a question from the chat. Why does Jason think they stopped digging Göbekli Tepe, and also didn't they find a place by it that was older? They found a bunch of places in the area that are older, Karahan Tepe and a few others, but I'll let Jason answer that.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I believe it's Andrew Collins just documented that it's the sunrise of winter solstice. There's an alignment at Karahan Tepe, which is about 500 years to 1,000 years older than Göbekli Tepe. And so we're talking about megalithic builders that knew the stars, that aligned their sites to astrological events, calendars, and they were megalithic stone builders. These pillars are huge.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 12,000 years ago, which doesn't make any sense because it took about 2,000 to 3,000 years after they buried Göbekli Tepe. That's when you find the first pottery of the, I think it's the Hassani culture, which is nearby.
Yep.
That's when you get the first pottery, about 2,000 to 3,000 years after Göbekli Tepe, megalithic stone building. So it's just, in my mind, this destroys the narrative completely.
Absolutely.
Just by having it destroys the narrative. And,
totally.
You know, there's a lot of comments on why they're not digging it up and why they're not excavating it.
Why they stopped.
Why they stopped is they say that, oh, you know, we're too stupid. We don't want to damage anything. They'll be smarter in the future to figure this out, which I think is a little weird.
Yeah, Jimmy Corsetti from Bright Insight did a whole thing on that. Like that, the reason why they're not digging it up is to just future generation technology. We've got amazing technology and resources to do that now. He gets conspiratorial about it. What do you think?
Well, I don't want to say this out loud, but I will.
Good.
We're on Rumble too, so they can take us off YouTube.
I'm just going to say, you know, look what happened in Mesopotamia and Iraq when there was the war. They just, whatever was cultural, there was a fundamentalist religion that came in, and it was their mission to destroy every single piece of history. And I hate to say it, but that could be a possibility in our future as well, where you could get some fundamentalists that want to destroy history, and they will take this site, which it's like Eden. This is like the cradle of our civilization, or cradle of knowledge. And could you imagine if that got into the wrong hands?
Yeah. I've actually, so I was in Iraq in 2005 and 2006. And I've been to Saddam's palace after it was raided and all that stuff. And it just literally just in rubble. There's just trash everywhere, spray paint on the walls and stuff. But at one point, that place had some of the oldest artifacts in human history, if not the oldest. And it was just, at the time, I was 23, 24. I didn't quite understand the significance of it, but you know, that's actually happened recently too. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, people went in and like destroyed a lot of stuff that was, you know, ancient monuments and whatnot. And so that's a practice that unfortunately continues to happen, usually for information control narratives, if I were to guess, but just heartbreaking.
Yeah. So if I had the choice to dig it up or wait, I would probably choose wait as well.
With Göbekli?
Yeah.
For that reason, eh?
For that reason. Yeah. Because that side of the world right now is I can predict certain things in the future is going to happen over there.
I hadn't looked at it that way, Jason, and I really appreciate you giving me that insight, because I've been sitting there with Jimmy going, "God damn it, why don't they dig it up? I really just want to know." But that's kind of selfish in a way if you think about that. Like, what could possibly happen to in that area of the world in the next decade? You know.
So on topic with Iraq that we were talking about a minute ago, I just want to point out the largest U.S. embassy on planet Earth is the one in Iraq. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with Ross Coulthart from News Nation. He's made some interesting comments regarding what he believes is inside that compound. You've been there, Dave. What do you think?
About what? Sorry.
What's inside there?
I don't know, dude. I honestly just based on my experience in Iraq was very small. One thing I will share is that one time we were crossing a pontoon bridge that was crossing the Tigris River, and we were in a convoy about 45 trucks, and only one truck could go over at a time. So it takes about, and then you've got to set up defensive, you've got to change your defensive posture every time that happens. And so it takes a couple hours to cross this pontoon bridge. And I had to pee so bad, I was dying, and it's not really the safest place. And so usually people, they go in a bottle or something in the car, but I'm gun shy, was never able to do that. So I had to ask permission. I was like, hey, I was in the truck that had actually our company commander in it, and I'm the medic, and I sit in the back. And I'm like, hey, sir, do you mind if I get out and like pee, right? And he's like, well, he's like, make it quick, right? And it's nighttime, right? And I hop out of this up armored Humvee. I'm standing right next to the Tigris River. I'm peeing and I'm looking up at the stars. I'm 24 years old. You can see the Milky Way going by. And I'm just like, holy shit. I'm at the cradle of civilization right now. How did this Canadian kid end up at the cradle of civilization in Iraq? Which is another story altogether that I'm not going to share right now, but
sorry about
that.
No,
you're good. As far as what's going on in that embassy, I'd really like to know.
It could be some ancient technology that got recovered deep inside there. Who knows?
Oh, definitely. I wouldn't be surprised. The question was, what's underneath the museum? That's what Pat Breeze says. Yeah, exactly. What's underneath the Vatican? Everything from the Library of Alexandria, maybe.
Well, if we've learned anything, it's usually something older that was already there before and they built on top of it.
Exactly. Were you, Jason, were you showing us stuff from your...
Yeah, sorry, we can get back to slides if you want.
Sure. Basically all I wanted to do was show you the language.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you understand the language, then you could look at ancient sites and ancient artwork completely with different eyes. And let me see if I could pull up another one quickly, because it was in the article that I wrote. And this one, it's very complicated, but so many people talk about it. It's the Dendera light bulbs.
Ah, yes.
Nice.
Or is it cooling water being sprayed out of a nozzle to quench some reaction? Ooh, we gotta show. So
the whole thing about are you sharing?
Yeah,
okay,
you're good.
There you go. Okay, so the whole thing about this image here is, they say it's the Dendera light bulbs. This is like the filament is the serpent, and this is the bulb, and this is just the wire going into this technology and machine. And you have this is like the jet pillar, which is holding up the bulb. Is it giving it electricity? So this is like our modern interpretation of it, right? But it actually tells you, there's hieroglyphs right next to it. It tells you exactly what this is. Most people don't read the hieroglyphs next to it, but basically it just says that this is like it's basically an image that's like showing you the life cycles of creation. Right. And so you have these two serpents, and this gets into mysticism because the serpent is the Ka, which is the light body or the energy body of Ra and Osiris. That's why the jet pillar, it's the rising of Osiris. It's the rising of the soul of Osiris, the Ka. And you can see the trick here is the eyes. Remember, the eye of Ra is the sun. The eye of Horus is the moon. So you have these two snakes. And if we if we connect the eyes to, let's say, the belly button or the eyes all over, from the middle of the scene, from this point in the middle of the scene to the eye of the person holding it, 23.5 degrees.
Wow.
So already we're seeing it's a calendar, or a celestial calendar. You can see the Jed pillar here. He's off to the side. If you measure the Jed pillar, 23.5 degrees. And you can see from the bottom here, it goes right into the eye of this person at 23.5 degrees as well. But what's interesting is that the lotus flower, the bulb on the left here, has the angle of the moon at 28.5 degrees. From the base of the lotus into the eye of the serpent, it's 23.5 degrees. From the bottom of the serpent, it's at 18.5 degrees. So we can map this whole artifact, and you can see that everything lines up from the belly buttons to the eyes to the lotus. Like every part of this picture shows you that it is basically a calendar of the life cycles of the earth, the sun, and the moon. And I don't think anybody, since they created this, knows this. So we're just assuming what it is. But if you read the text, if you know the mysticism of what these serpents are, what is the lotus flower? This is in the Dendera. This is the Dendera temple, the temple of Hathor.
Yep.
Hathor's symbol is the lotus flower. It's the symbol of creation. Because what does a lotus flower do is at nighttime, it goes under the water into the underworld. And when the sun comes up, it comes back out of the water and blooms. So it's the birth of the sun. It's the birth of the Ka, of Ra and Osiris. And that is what you're actually looking at, is a motif or a theme. But like I'm showing you, every single part of this composition is very specifically done with very specific celestial angles. And I don't have the slide in front of me, but I have it in the book Astral Genesis. Once you get into the cubit, like if you know how to measure the cubits and you know how to find where the cubit line is, you can actually measure this as well in a completely different thing, or in a completely different way. And you will actually get 36.5 cubits, which was 36.5, 365, 365 days.
Wow.
So it's like you have all these numbers that repeat over and over again, and they are astrological numbers.
What would a run-of-the-mill, like, mainstream Egyptologist say about that? About
I don't
these?
Yeah,
contact me.
I was just thinking, I've heard so many alternate type theories about these Dendera light bulbs. I don't even remember what the main is. Because
you could just Wikipedia it. Like right on Wikipedia, it shows you the hieroglyphs and what it says. Like right on Wikipedia. And I know, there's a lot of things not to trust about Wikipedia, but I think in this case you can trust the hieroglyphics. But the point that I keep trying to make is you're not looking at something with the right eyes.
Yep.
And once you see it, it is everywhere. It is everywhere. So this is like finding a language that we didn't even realize was a language. And it's a star language using sacred geometry of angles.
It's visual too. It's a visual. That's why across different cultures and mythologies, the names of the characters and the exact details of the character stories that arise tend to differ, but it's drawing from the same mathematical language.
Exactly. And it's the oldest language because like I showed you, this is Temple of Dendera, which is very late. It's the New Kingdom. So it's about 2,000, 2,500 years old. It's not that old, but you go all the way back to Sumeria. We have cylinder seals of Ishtar that go to about 5,000 years old that follows the exact same pattern as this. And then you go to Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago that has those V's that are at 24 degrees. So this is a language that has been kept hidden from humanity, but it's in front of us.
It's right in front of our face. So you mentioned some from Peru. What are some connections you found in Peru, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll have to try to look for that slide, but basically, the gateway of the god, gateways of the god in. I'm very bad with these names. Aruma. It's not in this book. Actually, you know what? Here's something perfect. You got to go. I'm gonna go on my Twitter because, like I said, Twitter is like my notebook, and I got to go all the way down because during the solstice. All right, we just got to go down to the solstice. There was a post from Peru, and whoever's posting this from Peru, this person is amazing because they post the best stuff. Okay, I'm going to send this to you. And then
It's
you
my
can
Uncle
pop.
Don's birthday, and I call him Uncle Dude, so I'm just throwing it up on the screen real quick.
All right, so you got to throw this up on the screen once you get this link because this is incredible.
You on that, Mike?
Yep, I'm pulling it up now.
Happy birthday, Uncle Dude! Shout out from Georgia, and also from your neighbor in Ontario.
Okay, so
the browser translated. There we go.
Can you click on the full picture and see if it pulls?
Yeah, I could explain it. Like,
nice.
Yep.
I'll just explain it what it is. So this is I believe this is in Saxy Woman, I believe. And you have this gateway, this door to the gods, and you can see there's these nubs on either side. So then everybody wants to know what nubs are and what these these doors are. Well, this is a waterfall, a natural spring that comes from the mountain. And on December solstice, the winter solstice, the nub and the door creates a shadow of a priest gathering water for a purification ceremony.
Huh.
All right. So it's a play of light and shadow that tells the story of the shaman to do the purification ritual, which only happens on the winter solstice. Now you can see there was a nub on the other side, which is broken off.
Yep.
But it would do the exact same thing during the summer solstice. So you would get these shadows.
Yep.
And there's a doorway. I'm gonna have to go to like my very old presentation to try to find.
I'm going to be looking at everything like with this. I know. We're on Peru right now, but Pat is asking about Aborigines in Australia, if there's anything from them or even Native Americans in North America.
There's absolutely native things in North America, especially Serpent Mound. So you have a lot of earth mounds.
Which actually we're going to in March, Mike and I, with Tyrone from Rebirth of the Word. So look forward to some content from that.
Yep.
Okay, I found it.
Nice.
So I'm gonna share this with you guys here. Let me get it.
I know the Aborigines have a bunch of petroglyphs and stuff in Australia. It'd be interesting to check out that.
There we go.
Aruma Muru. Okay, so this is like the Gate of the Gods, which is in Lake Titicaca in Peru. And a lot of people go here. And look, it's like exactly the same as this T-pillar in... Okay, so here's...
shadow effect.
They got the T-pillars. They got them all the way to Turkey for Göbekli Tepe.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, you see the shadow effect. That's a good eye. But look carefully. Yeah. You have this hole here, this depression. And on this side, you see how there's these lines? And on this side, you also have lines. Okay? Nobody explains this. All right, I'm going to explain it. Okay, so here's the actual picture, and you can see how this really weird. So here's the doorway, and then you have these weird like cut lines. See these cut lines right into the stone? Well, the guides, they say it's completely natural, right? Well, let's measure this.
No shit.
23.5 degrees. All right.
Incredible.
And I put this 15 degrees, the movement of the sun, because it cuts the these cuts of the T's here. So basically, here is the yearly path of the sun. So here's the zenith, northeast, west. And so this is where the summer solstice is, equinox, winter solstice at 16.1 degrees south latitude. And it creates this kind of geometry, this ratio. We call it the eye, or I call it the eye of the sun. And so if we tilt it at 16.1 degrees, it's actually the exact same line as this side of the door.
I'm literally tilting my own head.
Yeah. But let me like just zoom in here so you can see this.
Yeah.
All these ratios are identical to the door itself.
Yeah.
So, you know, the local legend says the Incan priest had the golden disc of the sun, placed the disc in the doorway, which was the key to open the door. This was the same false door theme that's found in Samaria and Egypt.
That's some the Hobbit shit too, right there.
Yeah.
Straight out of the Hobbit. Sorry. Go ahead.
Where the sun is able to open the door and pass through it on special days. So think about this for a second here. During a specific day of the year, the sun will pass through this doorway. That's the key to this whole site. So during the equinox, there will not be a shadow.
Uh-huh.
That means the sun passes through the door. So this is a calendar. You can see it's a calendar if you know how to read the shadow.
Oh, wow.
That literally, basically, that's how Bilbo got into Smaug's. Sorry, but that's the same idea.
Yeah. So isn't that amazing that it's like we lost this knowledge, completely lost this knowledge, and it took some astral traveler, mystical guy who looking at Egyptian books of the dead to go, wait a second, they're talking about the stars and celestial angles. And then I'm like, okay. And I find this everywhere around the world.
I think you're onto something, my man. I wonder, like I asked about, like, have you sat down with a run-of-the-mill Egyptologist and showed them some of that stuff, and they showed them the correlation to other older or younger civilizations across the planet, and what, you know?
I'll tell you this. I've spoken to one actual professor. All right. I'm not going to say who it is, but I've spoken to him and I've given full-on presentations to them. And they cannot deny it. They love the work.
But they can't say it out loud?
They just can't present it. And they're very honest with me. They're like, even if we presented it, they're not going to listen to you.
That's so frustrating.
That's so sad that the academic institution, which houses science, let's be clear here. You don't need the academic institution to do science. Science is the way that you think and perceive the world around you. But it's so sad that they've lost sight of what science is really supposed to be, that they be behaving like that.
So I'm just kind of like here using Twitter or X now as my notepad. And every day I'm like, oh crap, I figured something else out and I throw it on Twitter just so I don't forget it. And I'm just talking openly, sharing the information with everybody, like yourselves, hoping that this will get legs, because I'm not the only person that could do this. If you have like Adobe Illustrator, you just type in the angle, it gives you the angle, and I don't have to play with the image. You just get a really good image as a straight on shot, and you just overlay it.
Right.
So I was actually wondering, when you get, let's say, a new piece of artwork, illustration, or whatever, you digitize that, get it in a computer. How do you begin dissecting it? You obviously know the key angles to look out for. What is that process like when you're analyzing a new?
Here, look, I just posted you got to throw that up. So this was like today. So here's the actual tablet.
Oh, cool.
Right. And what I do is I throw it into Illustrator.
Yep.
And I trace it exactly, you know? Yep. So once I trace it exactly, then I get rid of it so it's easier to see. So then I'll just get rid of the image. And that's my process. So basically, when I see an image like this, let me just get rid of this. When I see an image like this, I'm like, okay, it's Shamash. Let's see if I can blow it up a little more.
Yeah.
It's Shamash. He's holding the tool, which measures the sun and the earth. So I already know that this has angles in it. Then I look at the arms. I could just see with my eyes, this is a perfect square. So it's 45 degrees here. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's this angle? That's a weird angle. That looks like about 18 degrees, which it was. And then you look at the arms here, and like, I know that from if I place like a right at the center and I go, or from the back heel and I go right up, this line here has to be, 23.5 degrees. This line here, this hand is the same as this, 23.5 degrees. So I could already see, I've already learned with my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And then all I have to do is throw on the image.
Yep.
And
Wow.
I kind of moved the screen, sorry. So it doesn't line up now. But
Oh yeah.
so that's how I do it.
That
Very
is super
cool.
cool. Thanks for letting us look over your shoulder and what you do behind the scenes to produce this information.
Yeah, very cool. People always pay attention to the similar building styles, in place to place, and across different cultures and times and stuff like that, different types of building styles. You're taking that one step further and looking at comparing, finding these angles everywhere. What is your this is a question everyone wants to know, but if you were to put your best foot forward, how are all these cultures connected by this information if they're so far apart and there's in time and space, geographically, why? How is it even possible?
The only thing that I could think of, there's only like a couple possible answers to this. One is you have a global heritage.
Mhm.
All right. So call it the Atlantis hypothesis,
Mhm.
which is there was an advanced civilization or an advanced group of people that held the knowledge of the stars, knowledge of civilization, and they spread around the earth, and they never lost that. So I would say every one of these civilizations came from Atlantis. It's like you get these people where they say, oh, you're racist to even say that. I'm like, no, what I'm saying is even the natives came from Atlantis.
Yep.
It was a global society. Nobody was left out, and that knowledge went to different parts of the earth, and then it morphed, but the tenets stayed the exact same. Another thing that it could be is the whole cataclysm, where you have groups of people were scattered across the planet, and there were survivors pre the flood who held the knowledge of civilization and took it upon themselves to find human civilization around the world to reintroduce this knowledge to them.
And that's your Quetzalcoatl's and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I always want to point out that the reason people say that's racist is because the people who describe Quetzalcoatl and what's the other guy, same type of guy. Anyway, they're the ones who described him as bearded and white skinned. So it's just coming straight from the source. Don says, great show, guys. We'll catch up the rest tomorrow. Very interesting guest. Pat Breeze says they had ancient Starlink that connected them all. Elon is older than you think. That's the one I'm going with.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
And I've learned over the years, you never question Pat. He knows a lot. So. Yeah,
very cool. I'm glad he stayed for the whole show here. We're going on about 2.5 hours. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we call it a night?
No, I'm good. I'm just happy to be here and share this information with you and have it public.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to share this at Conscious Life Expo soon, and that's going to be a big presentation.
Yep.
And then Contact in the Desert, which both of you may come and visit me, so that would be fun.
We're definitely in talks about it. We're doing Cosmic Summit. Are you planning on going there? Here's Conscious Life Expo, February 10th to 25th. Have you been to Cosmic Summit?
I haven't, but I've heard about it, and that is something actually I might want to tap into. I think that's a group that really is into this information.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it'll be very well received there. And
you would fit right in.
Yeah, for sure. And I could see you presenting there someday as well. Also, find him at Contact in the Desert. Find Jason at Contact in the Desert. What are the dates for that?
I believe it's the last weekend of May, first weekend of June.
Okay, yeah, that's right. We were looking at it as well, and that's a 5-day, like almost a festival, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a festival. They got a huge pool. I mean, I think the pool is the size of a football field.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, it's a party for sure.
Yeah.
Also, check out the crystalsun.com here, Jason's website. If you want to look into crystals, order any crystals or books, some of his books, but you can find them better on Amazon. Also, you can find him on Facebook, X, and Twitter, Jason, or Facebook, X, and Instagram. Anywhere else they can find you?
Nope, that covers it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining the show. This was a real blast. 2.5 hours. You might have beat Ricardo, actually.
Okay. Well, he'll have to come back then. He has a new book. He has a new book out now. So you got to have him back for the new book.
He's definitely coming. He's definitely coming back for sure.
Yeah. Well, everyone, be sure to follow Jason and follow us as well if you're not already. We appreciate your support. It's really fun to join a community and build that community. And we want to hear your voices too. So if you want us to cover something on the show, suggest it. Go ahead and send us a message. We'll have links with all our contact info in the description of this video.
I just wanted to thank Jason because we were at 98 subscribers before we started the show today, and we officially at 100. So nice. Boom. That's a celebration. So it took us 3.5 months to get there. So I guess the next one is 500. So who knows how long that's going to take. But Jason, man, you're a pretty big guest for us. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and effort you put in the show tonight.
All right. Thank you. All
right, cool. We'll go ahead. Oh, yeah. We're doing the music. Sorry.
We're good. I was just an outro song. Everyone have a safe week. Be kind to each other and ask questions. Find something.
Also, if Stephen Greer doesn't show us something real by Saturday, we all need to stop paying any attention. He's got literally 48 hours. All right. If he doesn't show anything real, everyone needs to stop looking at Stephen Greer's stuff.
But if that News Nation clip that airs on Saturday evening is what they're saying, it's what Steven was talking about. So he may be vindicated here shortly. Yeah. Eyes open, everybody. Thank you so much.